It is spring, or perhaps summer, in the year 260 AD. Outside the ancient city of Edessa in northern Mesopotamia, the modern-day town of Şanlıurfa near the Syrian-Turkish border, the vast armies of the Roman Empire marched in full strength. Led by their older Emperor Valerian, he sought to reclaim Roman lands that had been invaded earlier in that year by the Sasanian Persians. But Emperor Valerian, whether due to ignorance or overconfidence, would fall directly into the hands of Shapur I, the Sasanian king. It is worth mentioning that at this point in history, the Roman Empire was experiencing its darkest phase of what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. Along the Roman frontiers, enemies pressed in from every direction. Germanic tribes crossed the Rhine and Danube. Rebellions erupted within the provinces. Usurpers challenged imperial authority. Plague stalked the empire's cities and armies. Valerian's campaign in the east aimed to restore some faith and morale in Rome, showcasing that the empire was still strong and capable, and most importantly, would not be challenged by this aggressive, expanding empire from the east. For centuries, Rome's eastern rival had been the Parthian Empire. The Parthians were formidable opponents, but they often suffered from internal divisions and decentralized authority. In 224 AD, everything changed. The Parthian dynasty was overthrown by a Persian noble named Ardashir I. The new Sasanian Empire was more centralized, more aggressive, and more ambitious than the Parthian state it replaced. Its rulers saw themselves as heirs to the ancient Persian empires of Cyrus and Darius. The greatest of these early rulers was Ardashir's son, Shapur I. He sought to challenge Rome directly. The Sasanian military represented a formidable evolution of earlier Persian traditions. Its most famous troops were the elite heavy cavalry. These cataphracts were among the most powerful shock troops of the ancient world. Horse and rider were protected by heavy armor. Combined with long lances, made cavalry charges devastating. Alongside them rode mounted archers capable of showering enemies with arrows while remaining highly mobile. Persian commanders excelled at combining mobility with shock action. The result was a military system that repeatedly challenged Roman dominance. Under Shapur's leadership, the Sasanians had become one of the world's premier military powers. Unfortunately, ancient accounts provide only fragmentary information about the actual fighting. The exact details of the battle are frustratingly obscure. Unlike well-documented battles such as Cannae or Carrhae, no detailed tactical narrative survives. From limited evidence that's given is that the Roman force was estimated at about 70,000 troops, whilst the Sasanian force was smaller but had considerably more cavalry, particularly heavy cavalry. Given the lack of information about the battle, would lead us to conclude that when the two forces did engage in battle, Shapur would have used his more diverse army to his advantage. Sasanian archers, equipped with superior composite bows, would have led the lines, whilst Shapur's mounted horse archers were placed on the wings. The Sasanian horse archers were excellent marksmen. With their strong composite bows, they struck fast, and were extremely difficult to engage on the battle due to their swift maneuverability, something the Romans experienced firsthand at the Battle of Carrhae against the Sasanian predecessors, the Parthians. Using this information, it's highly likely that the Sasanians would have opened the battle utilizing these strengths. The Sasanian foot and mounted archers closed the distance and began peppering the Roman lines. Roman archers returned fire, inflicting casualties on the enemy. A brief skirmish persisted, until Shapur ordered forth his front lines of elite, heavy cataphracts to tear into the Roman legions. The cataphracts rode forward, thousands stampeded across the battlefield, directly toward the Roman front line. The Sasanian cataphracts were drawn primarily from the Persian nobility. They were heavily armored cavalrymen who formed the elite striking force of the Sasanian Empire. Both rider and horse were protected by heavy metal armor, making them one of the most formidable cavalry forces of the ancient world. With an air of confidence, the heavy riders with lances extended drove deep into the Roman lines. Typically not a smart move to attack heavy infantry head-on. But the cataphract was no ordinary cavalry soldier. The Roman troops at the very front of the column, who were not killed outright, were rendered useless due to the impact of the armored horses and lances hitting them with such kinetic force, causing broken arms, legs, or any other body part that was struck. Shapur used his vastly superior cavalry numbers to full effect, utilizing them to hit the Roman infantry in a brief engagement, then quickly disengage. Then a fresh reserve of Sasanian cavalry would repeat the tactic. These continuous cycle charges would slowly wear down the Roman troops without risking long, tedious engagements, which didn't favor cavalry against heavy infantry. These war horses alone would have weighed upwards of 1,000 pounds. And that didn't factor in the weight of the horse's armor, the heavily armored rider, and all their weaponry. The entire weight of the moving horse would have been upwards of 1,500 pounds of raw kinetic energy hitting the Roman infantry. Impacts this devastating caused shields to break and be dislodged from soldiers' hands. Armor was pierced from lance impacts. Dust clouds arose under the horses' stampeding hooves, making it hard for the Roman infantry to see from ground level. The whole situation for Valerian's front lines was chaotic. Shapur's tactic was working. The relentless Sasanian heavy cavalry charges were breaking down the Roman lines and their morale. Valerian had no real proper response. The Roman infantry had a difficult time effectively dealing with the heavy Sasanian cavalry due to the fact that they would not stay in direct combat for long, thus not providing the Roman troops enough opportunity to strike a killing blow. The charges were aimed directly from the front of the mounted rider, which meant the Roman troops could not flank or encircle the Sasanian cavalry and either pull them from their horse or find a weak spot in the armor from behind. And lastly, the Sasanian cataphracts were among the most heavily armored soldiers in the known world, covered from head to toe in chainmail, as well as metal overlapping plates, which made it extremely difficult to penetrate and kill them. Coupled with the other mentioned facts, the Romans could not effectively deal with this threat, and as a result were being decimated on the battlefield. With all the cards stacked in his favor, Sasanian King Shapur would have utilized his reserve cavalry and infantry troops to initiate the killing blow. Sending a few thousand or so of his reserves to flank the engaged Romans is most certainly what an experienced, battle-hardened general would have done. Which Shapur was, having fought many battles up until this point. Most notably, alongside his father Ardashir, who was a great military commander himself, having founded the Sasanian Empire after many hard-fought victories in battle. Whilst Valerian and his Roman troops were tied down and preoccupied with the Sassanid frontal attack, they were completely caught off guard by Shapur's tactical maneuver. Perhaps either utterly oblivious to the encirclement the Sassanid troops were performing, or perhaps it was far too late to act, the Roman officers made no attempt to try and counter the threat. By this stage, it was too late. Shapur's troops perfectly executed the encirclement, pinning the Roman flanks. Roman troops continued to fight on, either because they were hardened, loyal legionaries committed to the fight, or because they weren't fully aware of the situation at hand. Some vague reports about the battle suggest that once signs of certain defeat was discovered, many Roman troops fled the field in panic. To his credit, Valerian did not flee. He attempted to reorganize his army and preserve cohesion. Perhaps he also didn't realize the extent of the situation. Or maybe he believed, as emperor, it was his sworn duty to continue to fight on, no matter the circumstances. That precise information is unfortunately lost in time. After this point, we know for certain that the entire Roman army, apart from those who were able to successfully escape, disintegrated. Thousands of soldiers were killed or captured. What happened to Valerian afterward remains controversial. Later Roman authors painted horrifying pictures of his captivity. Some claimed Shapur used the emperor as a human footstool when mounting his horse. Others alleged that Valerian suffered prolonged humiliation before dying in captivity, whilst other claims suggest Shapur treated the emperor as a respected prisoner. Modern historians treat many of these stories cautiously. What is certain is that Valerian never returned. He died in Persian captivity sometime after his capture. No Roman emperor before or after him would suffer a similar fate. The capture of Valerian demonstrated that Rome could no longer rely solely on its traditional strengths. In the decades that followed, Roman rulers undertook sweeping military reforms that transformed the empire's armies. Most notable of these rulers was Valerian's son Gallienus and Emperor Aurelian a few years later. Those changes helped ensure Rome's survival for a while longer. But future collapse was to be inevitable.